Tihei Mauri ora. Ko te arawa te waka, ko tauhara te maunga, ko taupo te moana, ko waitahanui te awa, ko tuwharetoa te iwi, ko te rangitahau toku tīpona, ko Quintin Tahau toku ingoa. No mai, haere mai ki whanganui a tara. So just speaking to Paul's point this morning, that's my mihi, that's my introduction, who I am, where I come from. But I'm also Transpower's Demand Response Manager. And my job is to get DSM up and running in New Zealand. So the title that I was given for my little chat today was all about number 8 wire. And number 8 wire is part of New Zealand's mentality. It speaks to our attitude about can do. We can do anything with a piece of farming wire. We can probably build a transmission system, but we won't. That's not safe. We're very safety conscious. But also, what I want to talk to you about, I'll tell you a bit of a story about some of the heroes, because we need heroes. And heroes are all about people who are brave, people who are out there to challenge the normal. Does anybody know who this guy is? Okay, we'll come back to him later on. So our story in New Zealand started in 1888 in Wellington. And that's when we got our first public electricity supply. So we got some heroes then, and that sort of kicked off our energy addiction. So we had a public power supply coming from hydro to power some streetlights in Wellington. And Wellington's a really important part of New Zealand because it kick-started part of our economy with gold mining and a bunch of other stuff on the west coast of the South Island. So we got some heroes, and everybody's energy addiction grew. And Transpower, this has been our historic response. So Transpower, we own and operate the national transmission system in New Zealand. We're also the system operator, so we dispatch generation to meet demand. This has been our typical response. So we've been one of those hero organisations, I guess, to get out there and build infrastructure so that consumers can turn their lights on, their fridges can work, that sort of thing. And over the past, 5 years or so, we've gone through some quite major infrastructure projects. We've spent nearly 4 billion New Zealand, which is about, 10 billion US, or no, sorry, it's closer to 4 billion now, isn't it? The exchange rate's pretty good. So we've just spent about 4 billion New Zealand dollars over the past 5 years or so, reinforcing our infrastructure. Now, we need some more heroes. And this is where demand side comes in. We think, okay, we can get some more heroes out there. We think there are some brave people out there to challenge the norm. And that's been our challenge to the industry over the past couple of years. So, I'll tell you a bit about our search for heroes. So last year, we decided to go and search for heroes, for demand-side heroes, through a demand response, our first demand response commercial program. And we had a magic 100 megawatt target, much the same as Stephen had in 2007, 2009, whichever year it was. So we were given a target to reach 100 megawatts of demand response within 6 months or so of that target being set. That 6 months became 6 weeks, and that 6 weeks ended up becoming 6 days, but we made it. We got a bunch of heroes around the country who said, yes, we're willing to get involved, we're willing to challenge the norm, and we'll show the world, well, first of all, we'll show the world in New Zealand how to do demand-side management. And I'll talk to you about one of the, one specific hero who participated in our program last year, and it's the most unlikely hero. Like most heroes, they're in disguise during the day. This particular hero happened to be a hospital in Nelson. I don't have any pictures of Nelson Marlborough Hospital, but it's a hospital. Now, hospitals, their core business, I suppose, is keeping people alive. It's making people healthy. It's keeping them on their feet. It's certainly, I don't think, and probably most people wouldn't think that it's their core job to get involved in demand-side management or helping Transpower make better use of its assets. And that's not what they're aiming to do. What they're aiming to do is make better use of their assets for their local community while keeping people healthy, fit and well. So it was a big call for Nelson, Marlborough District Health Board, to take part in Transpower's demand response program, and they did an incredible job. So we had a target of 100 megawatts registration in our first demand response program. We ended up getting just over 160 megawatts at the start of our program. Nelson Marlborough were just 1 megawatt of that. And we had some very, very big organisations. Nelson Marlborough was probably one of the smallest, but we do have somebody from the smallest organisation here, Fiona from Callaghan Innovation. They gave us 50 kilowatts. Another great heroic act. So Nelson Marlborough, as it turned out, who would have known, they were the most accurate performer on our demand side program. If we called them for 500 kilowatts, they delivered 501 kilowatts. If we called 700, they'd deliver 710 kilowatts. They provided an amazing response. And what it's showing, I guess, to us, Transpower, and I guess hopefully the rest of the industry in New Zealand, is that it can be done. You know, hospitals aren't typically an organisation you'd expect to participate in demand response, but they were. So, kind of makes Transpower look a little bit silly if we don't do it ourselves. So this, we thought we'd get involved in demand response ourselves. And this photo here is I guess, one way we are demonstrating how we can do it. So we've got a bunch of lights. We're setting up our generator to respond to a demand response signal from our own demand response management system. So if the price, for example, hits just over $500 a megawatt hour, those lights go off. And if the price is slightly lower than $500 a megawatt hour, then there's another set of lights that dim to about 50%. And there's a bunch of other heroic stuff we're trying to do as well, because demand-side management is just one of the smart things that we can do. This is it looks kind of ominous. This is a drone that we've got that we use to inspect our lines. And if a substation goes down, we've got a mobile substation on the back of a truck. We're using that at the moment down south. So let's get back to this guy here. This guy's name is Eric Hoffer. He is an American philosopher, and he wrote a book called The Ordeal of Change. And one of the quotes from this book is, he says something along the lines of, in times of change, learners will inherit the earth, while the learned will be beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists. And that's a challenge that we at Transpower put to the industry. Okay, we cannot continue the way that we are right now. We really have to challenge the norm, and we are seeking more heroes. So our goal over the next, 4 or 5 years is to grow demand response in New Zealand. We've started with a relatively small program last year, and we are going to grow it. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to hurt. We know by experience through our program last year that it's not always going to be successful for some organisations. But they will learn, and they will adapt, and they will get better. So I'll give you one example of an organisation that experienced a bit of pain, but they thanked us for it. So there's a rather large user at the top of the North Island here. They refine oil, turn it into fuel, a bunch of other stuff they do. They participated with a bit of load management. They turned on their standby generator. We called them using price signals. They responded to those price signals, and next thing you know, their 1 megawatt standby generator stops working. You'd think they'd be angry with us, or angry with that situation, but they're really pleased. They thought it was great. They learned a lot out of it. Those guys are real heroes in my book, and they are the ones who are challenging the norm. So I started off, what Paul didn't mention earlier on is when you introduce yourself, so part of Māori tradition is when you introduce yourself, as you do, you're supposed to finish with a song, Paul. I will spare you. So I'm half Māori, the other half of me is Irish. And it just happens to be St. Patrick's Day. I thought I could not come here and not do a limerick. So I'll give it a crack. All right. A Nelson hospital tower turned some lights off last year for an hour. Then they turned down the heat, did the same the next week, and got paid loads of cash by Transpower. Thank you.